Hi everyone, this is lesson 5.4, and today your learning target is I can find equivalent fractions, and the main word that I really want you to focus on in this is that equal. Think of equal fractions. I can find equal fractions. Learning target is I can find equivalent fractions, and I want you to think about that word equivalent. Equivalent simply means equal. I can find fractions that are equal to one another. So multiplication rule. This is important for you to know and understand. It's not difficult, but hint, 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 tests, quizzes, know what the multiplication rule is. The multiplication rule is simply multiplying the numerator and the denominator by the same number. So let's say I have 3/4. My multiplication rule would be, let's say I needed to multiply by 5, so I would do 3 by 5, which is 15, and 4 by 5, which is 20. That would give me, using the multiplication rule, to give me an equivalent or equal fraction. So 3/4 and 15/20 are equal fractions. So a big thing for you to know and remember, the multiplication rule. Hint, 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 hint. Tests, quizzes. Know what the multiplication rule. The multiplication rule is simply to multiply the numerator, the top number, and the denominator, the bottom number, by the same number. So if I have 3/4, I would take 5 and I would multiply it by the numerator, which would give me 15, and I would multiply it by the denominator, which would give me 20. So 15/20 is equivalent to 3/4. The slide was in there twice. Sorry about that. But what we could just say instead of this is the division rule is exactly the same. Now, if I wanted to make my fraction smaller, I would do the same thing. And the division rule for finding for equivalent fractions is the same. So if I have 6/8 and I want to divide this by 2, 6 divided by 2 would give me 3, and 8 divided by 2 would give me 4. 3/4 is equivalent to 6/8. So let's find equivalent fractions. How do I go from 7 up to 14? I need to multiply by 2. So 3 times 2 is 6. 7 and 2 is 14. How do I go from 8 up to 24? Multiply by 3. 5 times 3 is 15. 8 and 3 is 24. Okay, so when I have a mixed number, I don't want a mixed number to find an equivalent fraction. So what I need to do is the whoop whoop trick. So 7 times 1 is 7, plus 4 would give me 11. So I would have 11/7. Now I can use the multiplication rule to find my equivalent fraction. So 7 times 3 would give me 21, and 3 times 11 would give me 33. And now I could leave it like this as an improper fraction, or I could turn it into a mixed number again. So I would ask myself, 21 can go into 33 how many times? Once. I'd subtract that 21, and I would just do a little problem, 33 minus 21. 3 minus 1 is 2. 3 minus 2 is 1. So I would get 1 and 12 over 21. Now, 33 21sts and 1 and 12 21st are equivalent. They are the same. But what that means is I went from an improper fraction to a mixed number. Let's do the next one. So again, I have a mixed number. I can't have a mixed number and find an equivalent fraction. So I need to do the whoop whoop trick. So 3 times 2 is 6 plus 1 is 7. So I have 7/3. And now I want to go from 3 up to 6. So I'm going to multiply by 2. And 7 times 2 is 14. So I have 14/6. That is my equivalent fraction for this. If I wanted to turn this into a mixed number, what I can do is, how many times can 6 go into 14? That would be twice, so I'd subtract 12, and I would get 2/6 left over. So notice that my whole number stayed the same, but 1/3 found its equivalent of 2/6. Homework question. So I want you to do 3/7 and turn that into something over 35. And I want you to do 1 3/5 and turn that into something over 15. So on this one, remember the whoop whoop trick. Multiply first and then add. So let's talk simplest form. Simplest form means I take a fraction and I put it in the smallest numbers I possibly can. And we're going to use the division rule. So that means that I take a number and I divide it from both the numerator and the denominator. If I look at 6 and 8 are both even numbers, so I'm going to divide both of those by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. I could try to divide by 2 again, but 3 is not divisible by 2, so my answer would be 3/4. 14 and 21. Well, 14 isn't even, but 21's not. And I know 14 goes into 7, so if I divide by 7, 14 can go into 7 twice, and 21 can go into 7 3 times. I cannot divide by 7 again, and there are no other numbers that 2 and 3 can be divided out by, so I know 2/3 is my simplest form. On this one, I know 7 is a prime number, and it can only be divided by 1 in itself. And dividing a number by 1 is pointless because I'm going to get the same answer. So if I divide this one by 7, 7 divided by 7 is 1, and 35 divided by 7 is 5. Anytime there's a 1 in your numerator, you know your simplest form. You can't get any smaller than that. For this last one, let's say I divide by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 12 divided by 2 is 6. Well, if I look at this, I know that 3 can be divided again by 3, and so can 6. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. I have a 1 in my numerator, so I know I'm as small as I possibly can get. But notice that I had to divide twice, and I used 2 different numbers. There's different ways to do that. You could have divided by 3 the first time, or you could have divided by 6 the first time. But I did it 2 different numbers, but whatever I did to one number, I did to the other. Okay? You are going to do 2 questions to find them in simplest form. So remember, you're going to divide on both to solve. Okay? If you have questions, make sure that you ask during homeroom. If you were gone, make sure that you come see me during homeroom or ask in class. All right? Have a great night.